Before I begin this deep dive video, I want to put out a disclaimer which you are seeing in the beginning of this video. I understand completely if you cannot watch today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. This game is something I didn't think I would get, and I'm still kind of upset about spending $4 on this, but like I said, it's $4, it was on sale, and unfortunately I did not know what it contained until I started playing. And I would warn you of spoilers, but I don't recommend playing this game at all. Hello, what's up, and welcome everyone. My name is Miss Quinn, and today we'll be talking about the suicide of Rachel Foster. So sit back, try to relax, because this is going to be a doozy. I played so many games throughout the years, and I have never been so disgusted by the writing. The Suicide of Rachel Foster was released in 2019 and is separated by 9 days, which by the end I was just happy that it ended. But let me not be too harsh on this, okay? Let me first talk about the things I did like, just like I did in the Marvel's Avengers video. I really liked that the graphics were amazing. They looked so beautiful. It was obvious they worked really hard on this, and it came out well. It reminds me so much of The Shining by Stephen King, so I think that's one of their favorite movies, and it's also one of my favorite movies. So you can tell throughout this game, if for some reason you decide to play it, that it took heavy inspiration in this. For me, it was able to make me feel something like something was going to happen to me. But it could also be because I scare easily, who knows. I also like the voice acting in here, and trust me, I've heard way worse. And I finished this game in 4 hours and 30 minutes. Now, with that being said, I don't have anything else good to add here, so let's jump into the story. We begin the game with our protagonist Nicole reading a letter that Mommy Dearest wrote. Now, I am going to be reading little bits and pieces of this letter. Now, the reason why I need to read this for you guys is because it holds very important context, so strap on. I've always thought of you as a fighter who, faced with the toughest challenges, is capable of brandishing all the weapons necessary to fight courageously and heroically. We never talked about what happened with Leonard, your father, but now I need to tell you a few things before this illness separates us. We then cut the camera basically facing down to black umbrellas in the pouring rain as we slowly walk upwards to our mother's grave. We cut again to the letter. The affair your father had with that young woman 9 years ago and her ensuing suicide broke our family apart forever. I imagine exactly what was going through your head in that moment. That your father irreparably betrayed our trust, and that she had done the right thing by throwing herself off that cliff. I was there. I've always been there. When you dislocated your shoulder at the first game, when you sobbed at night in a room you didn't recognize, and when... Now, that's not where the letter stops, but that's where I'm going to make it stops. But by the end of the letter, she tells you to sell the hotel and to pay off your university loans and to give the rest to the girl's family. Wow, thanks, Mom. The next scene we see is Nicole driving through a winding road in a snowstorm, and this is when we also learn that this game basically takes place in Helena National Forest, Montana, December of 1993. The radio talks about just how horrible the snowstorm is and how it's getting until she finally makes it to the Timberline Hotel. When Nicole arrives at the hotel, we automatically know she hasn't been there in 10 years by what she first says. Then we do as our attorney says and head to the office, but that's when we hear an incoming call. Now, it doesn't matter how fast we move because you're going to miss it anyway. We are then forced, to listen to the messages, which this is when we learn that the phone lines have been cut due to it being unpaid for so long. And then the newest message that we get is basically the call that we just missed, and it's coming from Nicole's attorney, Jenkins. He tells Nicole to assess the hotel before putting it on the market, since he has a mountain of paperwork to go through after a random hotel chain that wants to take over the hotel drops it off. This obviously upsets Nicole since I'm pretty sure she wasn't expecting to stay there for that long. But hey, now she must go looking for the management key that Mr. Jenkins had apparently left in the master bedroom. Entering the master suite, I can see what people see when they tell me I have way too many books in my home, but this man has such a mess inside of his house with books on books on books that it's just ridiculous. The hotel room is just so damn dirty, and the only clean room in the whole hotel room is Nicole's. She even makes a comment about how everything is exactly how she left it years ago when her and her mom had to abruptly leave. Now, she keeps mentioning later in the game and early on in the game that it's been 10 years since she's been there, so keep that in mind. Anyway, after we grab the management key, we get a call from a guy named Irving who stutters way more than I do. Now, in the call, he says he works with FEMA and is telling her how the hotel is old yet sturdy. Nicole is basically asking why he's saying that, and he responds with the good old, hey, the storm outside is getting worse, and you should probably stay in, but Nicole cuts him off, tells him bye, and hangs up the phone, like any old good person would do. We then come across a window with its shutters ripping off from the window, and she calls Irving back and asks him how much time she has left to leave, and that she'll have to risk it. Unfortunately, he tells her that she could die out there if her car breaks down, but that still won't deter Nicole. She is obviously not having any of that and goes back down to the garage. However, not only is the garage door not opening because it's frozen, supposedly, but her keys are now missing, which doesn't make any sense if it's supposed to be empty. Like, she's the only one supposed to be in the hotel. But Irving tells her to relax and that she's safe up there, and of course she gets angry. This is where the days officially start, and we first start off by getting a call from Irving and telling her that she has everything in order to have a good night, but that she's going to have to look at the main power system. She, of course, calls him back and tells him she could use a shower, and he tells her that she'll have to go to the furnace, which Nicole refers to as the old farting ghost. This is where Nicole starts receiving fond memories of her dad. Then they discuss getting some food, which her only option is having beans. She then heads down to the furnace, turns it on, heads out to the master suite, and if you think the game can't get any better, well, think again, because she starts playing her bass. And with that, we end our first day. Day 2 starts with Nicole heading to the pantry of the hotel since, she's starving, and that's when I saw this dirty bowl. Again, no one is supposed to be in the hotel but Nicole. But there it is. Nicole sees that the food is there, like the fruit, and that it has mold in it, which makes sense since it's been 5 years since anybody has been up there. Sadly, while going to the freezer, we do see the good old muggle lunch. But then guess what? Yeah, we get locked in the freezer. And before you ask, no, I didn't panic. I knew this was gonna happen. Okay. I watch plenty of TV. Get on here. We need to unscrew the vents. Don't worry, however, because the door suddenly unlocks. And when we leave, Irving ironically calls Nicole to tell her that sometimes the door tends to lock itself. Thanks for letting us know beforehand, okay? For some reason, she puts the entire tin can of beans in the microwave, which I'm guessing you're not supposed to do. But it's okay. After her wonderful lunch, Irving calls her again, saying that Jenkins, her attorney, had called him saying that he wasn't going to be able to make it and gave her instructions to complete the inspection on her own. He gives her a specific instruction to check the second floor first since that's bound to be the most damaged. So, like the most amazing person that Nicole is, she does go. It has mold, and she discovers that the west wing of the hotel is locked. And Irving tells her that her father had started renovations for the hotel, but that he never got the loan from the bank in order to finish. This is when we learn that Leonard's man cave is on that wing, and it's in the attic, and she even said she tried so hard to forget about it. Irving tells her that the location is pretty run down with no windows, and yes, this brings up red flags. Nicole basically asks why he knows so much about the hotel, and he gives her some lame excuse that he was in charge of giving supplies to the hotel, and that's how he met Leonard and knew everything about the hotel. He apologizes, but she just wants to finish up the rest of the inspection. After hanging up the phone, it's only a little while before we hear another phone ring. But weren't the phones disconnected? This is a problem in the game because it is never explained how she was able to get a random call when, again, the phones are supposed to be disconnected. Well, after answering someone over the phone who is definitely not using a voice changer, tells us to not sell the hotel because Rachel is still alive. Of course, when Nicole asks who it is, all he does is, well, hang up. Again, I thought the lines were supposed to be cut. She then calls Irving and tells him that someone called the hotel telling her not to sell the hotel. Apparently, news gets around fast, according to Irving. Also, this line from him is rather interesting.
That girl's death, Rachel, it was the result of painful events, and now it's someone's obsession.
Then he goes on to talk about how high in the community the Fosters and the McGraths were. Like, okay, I get it, they were big. Like, trust me, this is not going to be the first time they're mentioned in this way. This day starts off really weird because Nicole obviously gets a call from Irving, but right away we hear the voice of her dad. And this is when Nicole first calls him daddy. But shockingly, it seems as though Nicole was hallucinating because it's actually Irving. No, he didn't call just to give us a good morning. He called to let her know that the snow knocked out some power lines and that now she has to turn on the backup generator. The only catch about this is that we have to go through a crawl space since the side door in the garage is stuck. Again, how convenient. While on our way, the lights get worse, but hey, that's when we find a dynamo flashlight that we can use to light our way, which in order to use it, you need to keep pressing the button to crank it up, which is great that we found it because once we get into the crawl space, the lights fully go out. When Nicole gets to the backup generator, she finds a lipstick that was popular when she was in high school. The only problem with the lipstick is that it has been discontinued for about 9 to 10 years, which doesn't make sense since an unopened lipstick can last up to only 2 years and the hotel has been closed about 4 years. But yeah, whatever. Let's just keep that in there. You know, let's keep going with it. Day 4 is when I started to want to throw my controller across the room. This is where we put on our detective hats and discover things that should have been left buried. Up to this point, we had no idea how old Rachel Foster was since it was not mentioned, but now we can clearly see with our own eyes that she was 16 years old. One piece of evidence that we see is that a girl named Glenda, Ferguson, saying that she saw Rachel at the hotel, yada, yada, yada. The evidence that interested me, however, was the Daily News Helena, where that's where we learn how old Rachel was and that she was 9 weeks pregnant when she quote unquote committed suicide. You can tell this is where the game kind of wants you to think she may still be alive because of sightings, or at least for Glenda's perspective. And also, the other piece of evidence that interested me was the dad's journal, where it clearly show how obsessed he was with Rachel.
Hey, I found a book in Leonard's things. It's a collection of poetry, but it's got notes written in it.
Did your father write them? What do they say?
Dates, notes, thoughts. Listen to this. Today I saw Rachel.
She was gonna read it out
or
anyway.
Rachel is sad. Or Rachel says she feels alone.
He kept a diary about her.
But the book
Which
was
is
printed 8 years after Rachel's death.
Do you mean it's like he was talking with Rachel after she died?
As if he saw her.
Like I said, this is when I started to feel so disgusted. And for some reason, a picture of Rachel's dad was there. They talk about how strict Pastor Foster was towards Rachel and how he basically demanded utter perfection from her. Irving does go on to talk about Rachel's dad as well, but it seems super personal when he does. Like, I have no idea how to explain it, but just the way he says it, the tone of voice, and how serious he gets, it just seems super personal. But after going through all of the evidence, we are told to go to bed by Irving, and that's where we end our fourth day. Now, if you think yesterday was bad, then I'm sorry. Yes, the days are short. There's really, again, only those key moments going on. But day 5 is the shortest day. And if that makes you feel good, well, no, but it should make you feel a little better. However, day 5 is basically a dream. And with this line speaking for its entirety.
I can't see you. Where are you? Where are you?
In hell.
You know how much I love you.
I know, Daddy. I've always known it. I love you too.
Yeah.
Say it again, please.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Rachel.
Day 6 is when the game really wanted to go for the whole ghost story type of game and no longer mention the fact that Nicole's dad diddled a kid. The reason why I say this is because Irving calls Nicole to tell her about a ghost hunting show because they heard that Rachel may still be haunting those nasty crusted walls. Irving then plays the tape and it leads us to room 117 so we could do more digging, which is at the other end of the floor which she's currently on. How convenient. The door, however, is obviously locked, so we have to get the screwdriver from the generator room. Remember where I obviously hated going, but once we have that, we are able to go into the room and see the entire setup and mess that the people left behind. Yet, they apparently left in a hurry, according to the video that we see, which I will be playing here.
Did you see his face? He's missing a couple screws.
Sounds like a woman's voice. A girl. What the? I'll bet living alone in a place like this all winter, he can't help but go nuts.
So depressing.
Danny, did you get rid of the interference? Fuck, I pay you to do your job, not jerk around. Fuck off, Stan. What do you think I'm doing? It's a mess here. Nothing's working. There's voices. Listen, Danny, cut the crap. I'm gonna go have a cig, and if you don't figure out by the time I'm done, what the fuck are you doing?
I saw something!
Wait, you're not taping.
No, I mean, for real!
What? What the?
Someone's here, I'm telling you!
What
What?
do you guys say? It looks more like a, oh my god.
Oh my god! It moves! Oh god!
I'm telling you.
The guy in the plaid doesn't really seem to be reacting. Wait, yeah, never mind.
The light.
But if we take a closer look, this doesn't make sense. If they left in a hurry, then how is it that the tape is not in the video recorder, but in the tape player and ready to be played, and it's rewinded and everything? I have no idea, although this is when we find a parabolic microphone to look at ghost signals. We then walk out of the room and let Irving know what we found and that it's beeping, and that's where the day ends. The seventh day is where the game really pushes the whole ghost story BS in order for us to not pay attention that Nicole's dad was taking advantage of a child. But again, whatever, it's Christmas Eve. Irving calls Nicole and tells her about, what they could do afterwards, which Irving is taken aback. This is also the day where Nicole talks about her mom being so boring and so focused on business, like doing her taxes, working on bills, and that her dad was the fun one. This is honestly where I felt gross because she basically put her dad on such a pedestal. Like, I was already not liking this game, but basically she's making him seem like the best damn person you could ever know. After we get off the phone, we do walk around a little bit more, and guess what starts beeping again? Yup, and guess who calls? Yeah, Irving calls her when the microphone starts beeping once again. After hanging up the phone, we go on the longest walk to the ballroom, where Nicole recognizes the noise to be the chandeliers. She then goes on this whole memory lane trip, and it's obvious how angry she is with Nicole, like, wow, okay. Then Nicole keeps going, after the noise, and it leads us to a picture in the ballroom from back in the day. Nicole says that is when her mom only had eyes for Leonard, and quote, "I saw how he wouldn't stop staring at that girl." Like, yes, Nicole, that was a girl, not a woman. This is where Nicole talks about how Rachel carried herself as an adult and that she was so beautiful and perfect. Like, dude, calm down. You're not being nostalgic. You're just being an ass. On day 8, Nicole wakes up in a church without any phone, map, or even that sweet, lovely flashlight that up until now has soothed my anxiety. No worries, however, because now we have to go through the crawl space and in order to make it to the master suite. And before you ask, yes, I got lost, but I did like this bathroom that I found, which I will be showing up on screen. Anyway, once Nicole finally makes it to the master suite, she calls Irving about how she had woken up in the church. Now, she talks about sleepwalking and recalls a time in February where she ended up outside, but admits that she never told anyone about it. After telling Irving about her sleepwalking, however, she decided to go back to the church since there must be a reason for it. And yes, I could not think of a better way to spend your Christmas. Once we get back into the church, Nicole can now look around while obviously telling Irving all about it. This is when Nicole remembers a nursery rhyme that her dad taught her, which doesn't sound like a nursery rhyme at all. But hey, what do I know? I don't know too many nursery rhymes myself. Anyway, after she says the nursery rhyme, she starts walking into the crawl space when she sees a butterfly. But for some reason, I called it a bird on stream. Follow the bird? I obviously don't know my damn insects. Yeah, I need to learn my insects. Anyway, Nicole walks in deeper within the crawl space, and guess what? Guess what she finds after following the butterfly? Come on, take a guess. Well, if you guessed a replica of Rachel's room, then guess what? You're correct. There is a bed, painted on windows, a chalkboard that says the R word, which I obviously will not be saying it for obvious reasons. Irving does call her, and she says, quote, "There's some windows. drawn on the walls, books, sheet music, a pink bed. It's like a kid's room. So right here, Nicole clearly says it's a kid's room, but then goes on to say that those are all Rachel's stuff and that it reminds her a lot of Rachel and that it's a replica of her own room. And again, everything reminds her of Rachel, which is gross. I'm going to pause this right here, guys, because I would like to point out how stupid this has been. On day 7, she talked about how Rachel carried herself like an adult, but yet why does she have a rocking horse in the replica of her bedroom? A room that Nicole clearly described as being a kid's room. Now, I don't know many 16-year-olds that have a rocking horse in their bedroom, but I guess she's not like every other girl. Anyway, let's keep going because surely this can't get any worse. After hanging up the phone with Irving, Nicole finds Rachel's retainer box and tells Irving that, hey, didn't she have a retainer? And he says, well, yeah, but they couldn't find it at the site of her suicide. But then asks why would anyone keep a 10-year-old retainer box? But afterwards, Nicole finds a key that, of course, belongs to Nicole's old, music box that just so happens to be located in her dad's room. After Nicole gets out of Rachel's replica room, Irving explains how much her dad had changed after spending years in solitude and having, Rachel and his family's fate on his conscience. But hey, who cares? But apparently Nicole does, and this severely offends her.
I can't believe you said something like that.
Think about it. Room could be an act of love. Distorted even
Excuse
more, but
me?
in his eyes,
How dare you? My father might have had a lot of weaknesses, but surely
Weaknesses?
what you're saying. Leave out that he cheated on my mom. Leave out that he fell in love with a 16-year-old. But fucking hell, don't you dare even think that. He would never have built a fucking underground shrine for a dead person.
Like, really, Nicole? Your dad took advantage of a 16-year-old girl who couldn't even communicate well because she had a teach me how to talk book, who was severely bullied, and was isolated all of the time because she depended on him to teach her how to speak. And that offends you? Grooming, taking advantage of, and getting that child pregnant is nothing to you? But hey, your dad, loving this girl, Irving telling you that your dad loved Rachel is your last straw. This is honestly the part of the game that made me really upset. I was already feeling so disgusted by this point, but this is what made me upset. When Nicole gets to the master suite, she opens up the music box, which only serves to give her a huge wave of nostalgia about the last hockey game she had where she won a lot of medals. But this was also the day that Rachel supposedly killed herself. That she was so happy and she was waving a medal at her dad's face, but clearly he had other things on his mind. And then she goes on to say this.
Why?
You and Mom started fighting. Voices getting louder. That long silence when she comes down the stairs with the suitcases and Mrs. Bryce tries to stop her. Mom's car stays here, and we leave with my Uncle John's. I never found out what started that fight. Mom never wanted to talk about it.
Day 9, and honestly the longest day of the game, starts right in front of the sealed door on the second floor that she thinks may hold the answers to all of the questions that she's been having. Now, she does end up going on to retrace the steps on the day that Rachel died because, of course, that's what this is all really about. Anyway, she talks about how her mom being so busy on the day of the hockey game since she was going to take her to the game. Then she recalls how her mom ordered her to close the mezzanine, which I lasted a long time trying to look for, which I obviously cut out. Then she decides to look inside of the mezzanine since they used it as a storeroom. Now, when we get to the mezzanine, we are greeted with a bunch of mannequins looking like they're having the time of their life. But once we get to the end of the room, we see one mannequin with a hockey stick, which has Nicole's name on it, and the other on the floor with a baby on its stomach to obviously symbolize Rachel. Basically, it's a way of telling her that Rachel didn't commit suicide, she actually was killed. Now, before you ask, everything about this made my skin crawl. And again, before you ask, no, it wouldn't let me take the hockey stick that I could have used as a weapon. Nicole obviously tries calling Irving, but for some reason we are having connectivity issues. So after leaving the room, Irving actually calls us and his whole act ends. And he asks Nicole how many doors she has opened and to keep going. And of course, that means to go back to the second floor because why not? Once we get to the door, we can also see that this mysterious door has now opened. And then Nicole enters a room that someone who was watching us was obviously staying at. Within this room is a board with a bunch of quote unquote ghost sightings, and the game is still trying to push this narrative out. Nicole's high school diploma can be seen, pictures of her hockey team, pictures of her car. He had everything. He basically stalked this woman so hard. And yes, I said he because this is Irving's musty room. He was the one putting everything together, like the pictures and the lipstick, all in order to remember Rachel, but yet he didn't mention how he was able to call the building using that one rotary phone when the phone lines were supposedly cut. Like, he didn't choose that path, okay? He just had to do it. He goes on a rant about memories and finally tells us his mission to bring the last memory pieces together, which was Nicole, and reveals that he's Rachel's little brothers. Honestly, guys, here's the thing. This part of the game made me feel disgusted. He talked about how he could see his beautiful sister, how she would tell him what a great man he would be one day, that he didn't understand her dyslexia or that she was called the R word at school, and how he wanted to protect her after, she would cry. And fuck, I can't even say this.
In his dark world made of silence and prayer, there shone only one star. His wonderful sister.
Oh
A
dear
heavenly
God.
creature that spent
That's
hours
Rachel's
telling
brother.
him fairy tales in secret. She who told him what a free and strong man he would become one day.
Rachel?
She was like that. Free and strong. At the time, I didn't understand her dyslexia. Or what retard meant. That's what they called her at school. But I could hear her cry at night. I wanted to protect her. But I couldn't. One day, that beautiful, luminous creature met someone. A human being that saw her for real. And I was the invisible witness of what happened. A love. Simply a love. Nothing more, nothing less. But that love was too much, and it would be punished. Who paid for this love, Nicole?
Rachel.
After this disgusting conversation, Nicole now gets to go up to her dad's man cave, where, according to her in the beginning, she spent years trying to forget. Which, again, it makes me wonder what she saw in there in the first place. Anyway, in the dad's room, we find drawings that he drew of Rachel. And yes, there's 2 drawings of her that are her just being, being out and about naked, When we do have the misfortune of playing a tape that Daddy Dearest has prepared for her, he's basically saying that he misses her and that he's sure that the hotel has spilled all of its secrets. Like, in all honestly, I don't give an F, since he was speaking about life and death and love and how he was going to rest and make himself rest. And there was a certain point where it sounded like he was just talking to Rachel. Like, dude, you're gross. Near the end of the recording, though, we hear a writing of someone's writing on the chalkboard, and surprise, someone wrote murderer on the chalkboard that was previously empty. But the good thing, if there is any, is that we can finally pick up a key to our mom's car. You know, of course. Also, on our way down, Irving calls us and says this.
It was a very special man. His soul was big enough to love both you and Rachel.
I knew my father's soul better than anyone.
You were just a jealous kid.
The last door that we have to go through is our mom's trunk that supposedly hasn't moved since they left. But Nicole opens it to find a blanket covered in blood in which we have to wash it in the laundry room. And once we do wash it, we then find the missing retainer, from the box that we found earlier. And she does call Irving and says she remembers that she saw everything and that she was there. Yes, that's right. It was Nicole's mom that killed Rachel with Nicole's own hockey stick. That she also goes into saying that she saw the dangerous yet frightful creature which she never saw again within her mom's eyes. And once she got into the car, her stick was there after she kept looking for it, and that her mom said that she cleaned it. And she then said this.
I traveled all the way with Rachel's body and the baby she carried inside of her in the trunk, rolled in the blanket. God, oh my God. She killed Rachel.
I'm sorry. I don't like it.
Thank you, Nikki.
And yes, Irvin thanks her for confessing, for helping him uncover the truth. Like, I don't understand. You had the keys to the car this entire time. He could have honestly just looked inside of the damn trunk. He didn't have to go through every single thing that he went through. And of course, he then kills himself after being freed. And, obviously walks off to the cold and leaves Nicole alone after Nicole pleads him not to leave her alone. This is when Nicole goes crazy, thinking that she can hear Rachel, because we hear steps, and this is when the screen fades to black. Now, this part, I have no idea anymore, because, look, I will have to pause it right here. The driver's side of the window is rolled up with a tube sticking in, but the creases of the window are taped so none of the gas can leave. I'm pretty sure. Can all of you guess what's happening? Well, let's keep going. Jenkins finally calls her, but she no longer wants to sell the hotel and tells Jenkins that she's going to stay there forever and that his services are done. Then she's apparently talking to her mom and dad and planning a future with them, and also saying that they can invite, Rachel, and they can invite Irving, and that they could all be happy. At this point, you have to turn on the gear, turn on the dashboard, and then turn on your car. All this while she talks about how scared she is. After turning it on, you are given the option to turn it off, and which I did, but then Nicole decides to stay in the Timberline, with her family, and to bring the hotel to its former fortune. The suicide of Rachel Foster for me was like eating before going on a roller coaster, then getting sick while on the ride. In the beginning of the game, we get the letter from the mom calling the sick thing as an affair. In my opinion, if you tell me that your husband had an affair with a young woman, I'm automatically thinking of a 21-year-old, not someone who's still in high school and who's being preyed upon by her speaking coach. And it's saying that she did herself a favor by throwing herself off the cliff. Again, she's talking about a child. And no,
Claire, she didn't throw herself off. You killed her. The way she continues to sound so bitter and angry towards a 16-year-old even 10 years later is not only baffling, but it is disgusting. Nicole's mom, for lack of a better term, is described as being boring as fuck, only wanting to focus on bills, money for rent, money for the hotel. Like, you get it. I understand when we're children and teenagers, we see those kinds of things as boring. And again, this is deemed as boring still in Nicole's eyes, even when she's a fully grown adult. But whatever. We, as the player, are continuously being told what a great person Leonard was by Nicole, and I was so sick of it. Although she had supposedly hated her dad, she talks about him as if he were a hero, the more fun parent. In the very beginning, she even refers to her dad by his name, Leonard. However, almost right away, she starts calling him dad again, and even goes on to call him daddy by day 5, and starts praising the memories that she has with him. She, the old farting ghost memory, or him just being great at such things like being an intelligent man, like being able to work on a motorcycle in one day. Imagine only being mad and hating your dad just because he cheated on your mom, and not because he got with a 16-year-old and got her pregnant. He even had a journal where he obsessively wrote about Rachel, and this was even after she died. And again, it's never specified what she might have seen in her dad's man cave for her to try and erase it from her memories. She even states this in the very beginning of the game. The replica of Rachel's room deeply upset me to my core. Nicole goes from stating that it's a kid's room to saying it's a replica of Rachel's room within minutes. Now, I bet you're wondering why I'm even giving this its own section of the video, and it's because of a few things that she has within her replica room, and for me, it mainly lies within the books that we see. Now, I bet you're wondering what books. Well, in total, she has 6 books within the room. One book that is obviously a children's book called Coconut, another saying Teach Me to Talk, Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood, and Snow White. Teach Me to Talk is there because her dyslexia affects her speech. Dyslexia, for those of you who don't know, affects reading, writing, spelling, and speaking, which is why Leonard, Nicole's dad, is her speaking coach. And we all saw how that turned out. Just so you know, I never read any of the Brother Grimm's fairy tales until recently, even though I've had this book since last year when I bought it on Pango Books. However, why not finally break out the big book and read the same tales that Rachel has in the replica of her bedroom? We all obviously know the Disney retelling of these stories, and no, surprisingly, I haven't watched Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and I honestly have no idea if Little Red Riding Hood even has her own retelling. But hey, one thing at a time. Anyway, in the tale of Snow White, her stepmother is so prideful that she keeps going up to the famous mirror and saying, looking glass, on the wall. Who in this land is the fairest of all? However, it's only time when the mirror tells her that Snow White is the fairest of all, and then the stepmother proceeds to try and kill Snow White, even though Snow White, from my understanding at the time, is only 7 years old. We all know the famous apple that Snow White eats, then later it is lodged out of her throat, and she marries the prince and has the stepmother wear red hot slippers and dance until she dies, which honestly is my favorite ending of them all. In this case, no, we have none of that, but Nicole's mom does end Rachel's life, all because of a man who she should have argued with him and settled things with him instead of taking out her anger and everything out on a child who at that point was only 16, and I'm assuming she's also 49. and by the fact that she called her a young woman and called it an affair in the letter at the very, very beginning of the game, then it could be like when Snow White, where the stepmother kills Snow White solely because she's envious of her looks. You know, all because Snow White was seen as competition, as fucked up as that was. In this instance, Nicole's mom seems to represent the stepmother and feeling like there's some sort of competition between her and, again, a 16-year-old girl. Like, there shouldn't be any competition between the two. Rapunzel is obviously about a woman who was isolated heavily, and this one I did see as well, the retelling. And in this game, Rachel is isolated and obviously representing, you know, Rapunzel in that aspect, but she's isolated because of severe bullying, which made her vulnerable to Leonard, just like Rapunzel was vulnerable to that old hag. I honestly forgot her name, which is why I refer to her as an old hag, my bad. I'm probably just reaching, but it seems a little too convenient to where maybe it was a form of inspiration, but instead of making something that would stand out in a good way, it just came out as a totally fucked up game. The suicide of Rachel Foster for me is truly disgusting. We do not get to know what Rachel went through within this relationship, if you could even call it that. We as the player see Leonard's journal, which he obsessively wrote about Rachel, hear about what a great father he was from Nicole when she recalls memories, and we're even told by Irving how much he had so much love for Rachel. It doesn't matter if he loved her or if he saved her, when we don't even know how she felt about everything. He slept with someone his daughter's age, which, yes, I've seen many do, but these have all been consenting adults. I'm noting here that I'm probably on a list somewhere, since I was heavily looking up the age of consent in every single state, which post 1974, yes, I've checked that long, the age of consent for sexual contact specified, the lower age limit in Montana is 16 years old, which I still don't understand why we're putting an age as to what minor you can bang and what minor you can't. How about let's just flat out across the board, you can't like mess with minors. For me, the most shocking was learning that Hawaii had a minimum age of consent of 14 years old, but further research showed that in 1999, it went up to 16. But that's another topic for another day. Hopefully, I wasn't actually put on the list, but I've been looking into this for so long, I am pretty sure I am. So I'll be setting up a GoFundMe for my inevitable arrest. But anyway, in the whole quest of me researching up everything thoroughly for this video, I'm going to report my findings. It says, in Montana, the age difference between partners is considered to be irrelevant if one or both of them are below the age of consent. Unlike most other states, Montana does not allow for those below the age of consent to have consensual sex, even if they are close to the same age. So because in this case, Rachel is 16, it's legal, technically, unfortunately, even though Leonard is 49. It's only because since Rachel does reach the age of consent, which is 16, that is unfortunately, I fucking hate to say this, for, you know what, for Leonard, it is a good to go thing, you know? This is just sick. I don't understand why we need laws like this. Like, why can't we just say, listen, it's like when my friend Omar said, if they're old enough for the army, they're old enough for me. But it's because at that point, they're already 18 and adults. I understand that many people are going to say, well, this is fiction, you know, who cares? But why are you romanticizing pedophilia even in fiction? Just because Rachel was 16 doesn't make it any better, since she was isolated from other kids, from bullying, had a learning disability, and struggled in her home because of her dad. She is so vulnerable, and of course is going to be absolutely manipulated by an older man who just wants to get his, I can't say this on YouTube. I still can't. I'm sorry. This game's writing, in my opinion, was so horrible and severely lacked to give Rachel her own voice. Having Irving tell us anything doesn't help, since he would obviously be biased and is obviously even manipulated by Leonard, since he supposedly saw that Leonard was the only one who truly loved her. Which, no, he wasn't the only one, but I'm sorry, your sister was severely bullied, and you were a kid who only saw the fact that your sister was being bullied. So yes, what you should have been looking at it as, if you were much older, was, damn, this man took advantage of a vulnerable young teenager. She was truly taking advantage of, and for Irving to have been the one to recreate her room and still not understand that the children's book or the rocking horse, which only children would use, and not link that as to, listen, the way I'm seeing things, Rachel was Little Red Riding Hood and Leonard was the big bad wolf. Which again could be another form of a connection that this writer was going to make. Unfortunately, it just wasn't sought properly, taking advantage of her innocence and her naivety just to get what he wants, exactly like the wolf in the telling of Little Red Riding Hood. This video took me honestly over a month in total to write, record, and edit, since I kept getting upset. Okay, I got very passionate about this since it's something that we see on the news for what seems like every other month now. So I kept needing time to digest everything, since I had to look back at my stream videos in order to say precisely what I wanted to, and obviously to not lose track of how angry I was getting. I realized that a successful story as a writer is one that brands itself into your memories, but this one did that for all the wrong reasons. Yes, one can still say that the story of the suicide of Rachel Foster was a success because of that, but at what cost? Adventure games like What Remains of Edith Finch, Firewatch, and this game, does make you feel immersed in the world. But the biggest downfall about this game is that it's a huge example as to why I don't read books romanticizing abuse. Because people read this and it's an excuse to do what they do, because they're just like, well, it's in a book, so I can still do it. It's like, no, it's gross. It's what it is. I'm sorry. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. Yes, I played this twice, okay? Twice for you guys and for this video, just to pick different dialogue choices. And no, it doesn't make a difference, honestly, because Irving still responds the exact same. So those are, again, hours of my life that I will never be getting back. This game gives sorry and poor excuses to pedophilia, and I hope to never play it again. Like I said in the very, very beginning of this video, that yes, what this game does right is that it completely immerses you in the experience. You feel like something might pop out at you in any second, and you feel vastly uncomfortable. All of that is because I'm pretty sure they also took a heavy, heavy inspiration from The Shining. But none of that good inspiration, none of that immersion, none of that sweet, sweet graphics that I could just, lick off the screen. That does not excuse how uncomfortable and how upset and how physically ill I was, I felt the longer I was playing this game. And honestly, if I wasn't streaming this game, I would have just stopped. I literally would have stopped, and I have stopped on stream when it came to games that I was really uncomfortable with. But I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm still upset, as you can tell. The only really fantastic thing about this game is that I'm done playing it and that I no longer have to play it. The very unfortunate part is that I spent hours of my life playing this game, and I also spent $4 on it because it was on sale. I will never get those $4 back. I'm still salty about that. I don't know if you guys would ever want to play this game for yourselves. Like I said in the very beginning, I do not recommend it. But if you do, to get a taste of it yourself, to go through that roller coaster of a shit show yourself, I played it through the Switch, even though that's where I saw most of my lags. The Switch really isn't that good for a lot of games because you do see a lot of lags and a lot of frame drops, and it's just not that much of a powerful console. But I see that you could also play it on the PS4. You can also play it obviously through Steam. Like, I have no idea why you would want to play it, but go ahead. If I had to base a rating from 1 to 10, I would place it at maybe a 1.5. And that is only because even though this game, in my opinion, was an absolute shit show and made me upset and literally made me physically ill, unfortunately, it has been a very memorable game, to the point where I had to look up Age of Consent so many times. I swear, I think I'm on a list now. I'm not even kidding. I get very paranoid about this type of things. But I was just like, I have to make a video about this. And then I started going in, like, I was like, I can't put this all in just one video. It has to be a deep dive video. So unfortunately, that is what you guys have received today. And I don't know, so only because of that, it is a 1 out of 10, just because for me, it had that, it was able to brand itself into my head. But I have read a book that I don't remember the name of it, because it's been like a year, 2 years maybe that I've read this book. It probably hasn't been that long, but it felt like it. Actually, wait, no, yeah, I remember the name now. I remember the name. I will not say the name. All I will say is that it ends with Destiny. But anyway, this Destiny book heavily romanticized abuse. There was branding. There was like literal, like verbal abuse. And I don't like it at all. It's not my cup of tea. And this game is exactly like that. It is, but unfortunately, it is romanticizing pedophilia, which in my opinion is 10 times worse than anything that I have read. But like I said, this game was able to brand itself into my head. So unfortunately, it was successful in that aspect. But I don't know, it just made me physically ill to where I just wanted to just stop. But anyway, guys, with that being said, thank you so much if you made it to the end of the video. If you made it to the end of the video, please comment an mark. That way, like the word ? That way, so I know you made it to this part. But anyway, if you want me to delve into another game, or if you recommend any other game, like, feel free to share that as well in the comments. If you've played this game yourself, please let me know as well in the comments. Alright, guys, I appreciate you so much. Like, you have no idea how much I appreciate you for, just sticking around, or for watching one video, or for watching another, or for even just watching a few seconds of this video. It always means the world to me. And thank you so much. Bye.